Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here. Today's webinar is titled Musicianship and Aural Skills for All. My name is Giovanna Cruz, and I am the Manager for Customer Success at May Music. I am also a former music educator. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know a little bit about what the Make Music Customer Success team does. And we keep customers engaged through education and outreach efforts, such as the one today. We share feedback and provide communication from customers back to Make Music and from Make Music to the customers. We design, build, and deliver training to educators online and in person. We also present clinics at music educator conventions. And we create videos, webinars, articles, and resources to help teachers. Today's webinar is going to be given by Cynthia Gonzales, PhD, and she's on camera here. Cynthia is Associate Professor and Regents Teacher at Texas State University in San Marcos. She has been a professor since the mid-90s, and before that she taught general and choral music both in public and private schools, and as well as private lessons. She has also been a singer in groups such as Conspirare, which is an award-winning choral group in Central Texas, and she continues to compose both arrangements for Conspirare as well as sight reading pieces for the Texas UIL. Dr. G, as she is fondly referred to, has degrees from Harvard University as well as University of North Texas, and her primary research area is text music relationships in the early tonal leader of Arnold Schoenberg. One of her favorite classes to teach at Texas State is aural skills, and she's delivered almost 20 presentations about smart music as an aural skills tutor, including a keynote talk at Pedagogy into Practice, Teaching Music Theory in the 21st Century, and as a clinician for the 2019 University of Massachusetts at Amherst Workshops in Music Theory Pedagogy. She maintains a website with theory and aural skills pedagogical resources at listensing.com. Cynthia is currently on the editorial board for the College Music Society's Symposium and for the Journal of Music Theory Pedagogy. And additionally, she has been a reader for the AP Music Theory exam since 2015. In her spare time, she weeds her garden. So before I give the floor to Cynthia, I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping here. If you have questions and or comments throughout the webinar, feel free to chat them to us either by using the chat icon, which you can see they're surrounded in red, or by using the Q&A, and you should have that at the bottom of your screen. A little chat window will appear at that point, and you can ask your question and we'll get it on this side. We'll try to answer as many as possible at the end of the webinar. So now, without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so Cynthia can share hers, and here we go.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us. This is my first webinar, so it's very exciting for me, and so I'm very glad you're here with me today. Musicianship and aural skills for all. What do I mean by that? Well, part of what I mean is certainly music literacy, the basic ability to read music, and then musicianship skills. Well, again, what do we really mean for that? When I say musicianship and aural skills for all, what does that encompass? Well, certainly matching pitch with one's singing voice. It could also extend to you hear a pitch and you play it on your own instrument. That ability to have a sense of where pitches are on your instrument and in your singing voice. Audiate, that inner hearing, echo singing, working on your short-term memory to hold within your short-term memory a small motive, maybe 7, 8 notes, and being able to sing it back. Sing basic musical structures and patterns, as well as play them on your instrument. And that means memorizing some of these musical structures and patterns to put them in your working memory, into your long-term memory. That all connects with sight reading and sight singing. And certainly, can you imagine having an ensemble, whether you're a band director, orchestra director, choir director, whether you're working with junior high, high school, an amateur group, a professional group, a church-based group, a community group, if they could open a piece of music and be able to sight sing it without having to spend a whole lot of time working notes. working pitches, working fingerings. I know, dream ensemble. So increasing the ability to sight read and to sight sing. And then a very high level skill is error detection. Of course, those of you that are on the podium on a regular basis, you do this every day. If you teach private lessons, you do this every day. If you're practicing your own music for performance, you do error detection every day. It's not just finding the flaws, but then knowing how to fix them. And of course, every performer needs to be able to listen actively in both rehearsal and in performance. So that's a little bit of what I mean when I say musicianship and aural skills for all. And I don't, even though my background is as a singer, though as a youth I played guitar and still do on occasion, and I took piano lessons at one point in my life and still can sort of play piano, I'm not just talking about singers. I'm talking about musicianship and aural skills for every musician at every stage in their life as a musician, whether they're listening musicians in the audience or active performing musicians. I once heard an interview with Leon Fleischer, the very famous pianist and piano teacher, and he talked about hearing the music before it even started. And I began thinking, Leon Fleischer plays the piano. Someone else is responsible for intonation on his instrument. And he has to play musically, as any of us do, but the keys are set. He doesn't have to worry about intonation. It's a matter of where to put his fingers. He doesn't have to create the sound with his own voice. He doesn't have to tune it as you would on a stringed instrument or with a woodwind or a brass instrument. There was an aspect that I was really taken by, the fact that he talked about being able to hear all the music before he even sat down to play it. And I thought, that's the kind of musician that I want to be. That's the kind of musician that I want my students to be, that they can hear it all in their head before they even start performing. Now, in working to attain musicianship and aural skills, I talk to my students about practicing proficiency, not perfectionism. I'll come back to this, but I just wanted to drop that little seed here right now. Okay, so how do I find the newest addition to Smart Music, or a very new, it's been out a couple of weeks. It's the volume called the Listen Sing Method Volume 1. And if you are in Smart Music, on the home page where you can see Find Music, I think the easiest way to locate it is just to, under Find Music, put in Listen-Sing, and it will, you press Find, and or click on that, and it will lead you right into my book. So let's, for a moment, zip over. Oops, I'm zipping too fast here. Okay, so I am already inside Listen-Sing, the volume 1 of the first collection of real aural skills and sight singing in Smart Music. There's been sight singing before, but not these kind of interactive aural skills exercises. And to me, that's what's very exciting, because I've been creating these exercises for my own students to use, and know that they're very successful with my entry-level college freshmen. Generally, it's first and second semester that I teach a lot. And one type of exercise that I find very useful, I call echo singing. So what's happening here? Wait a minute, you've given them all the answers. Well, almost. In the measures that have rests, they're going to hear the motive that they are then going to turn around and sing. So this is particularly for students to learn solfege. At Texas State, we ask students to sing with solfege when they're sight singing, when they're singing musical structures. So for those who don't arrive knowing solfege, I'm going to give them a leg up. They're going to hear a musical motive. This is a very simple one. Then they, in the next measure, they see it notated. They see the solfege. So they're making that connection between what it sounds like. They're seeing that connection between the music itself, how it's notated on the staff, and then how we label it. And for our purposes right now, we're going to use the solfege label. Directly underneath the play and record buttons, you'll see that we have these for 3 voice types. A treble voice, this can be an unchanged male voice. This can be soprano, alto within the women's voice range. We have the tenor voice, and that will actually, loading the title here, this will change the clef to be treble clef down the octave. And then there's also for bass clef voices. And here we have bass clef. So I'm going to play this, and I'm not going to record it because almost all of my files, all of these, the exercises within the listen-sing volume have accompaniment. And so when you record, you actually have to, after the sound check, you have to put on some earplugs or earbuds or headphones, not earplugs, earphones, headphones, earbuds, so that smart music software doesn't hear itself. It kind of creates a bit of a problem if it hears itself, so that you get the sound directly into your own ears, and the microphone can still record your correct response. But for right now, you're going to hear the whole thing. Mi, re, do. Mi, fa, mi. Are you singing along? Re, do, ti. Re, mi, re. And I'm going to stop it right there. But that's an experience with echo singing. I find this particularly useful for my male students who are instrumentalists but did not sing before their voice changed. Because by the end of first semester aural skills, they need to be able to sing simple diatonic melodies. They need to be able to take harmonic dictation with 1, 4, and 5. 1, 4, 5, and 5, 7. And I have generally found through the years that students who can sing back with their own singing voices the musical structures that they will hear in dictation, if they can sing them, they can write them down in dictation. And so if I can get them to use their singing voices, they will generally be more successful, not just with the sight singing portion of the class, but also with the dictation portion of the class. So this is an example of echo singing from set 1. Set 1 has 26 examples, A through Z. There is also a set 2. So I want to show you exercise 2X, which is going to be towards the end of the alphabet. So it's one of the more advanced echo singing exercises that are currently in the first volume of Listen-Sing. You'll see that we now have some eighth notes and moving not just simple, a limited number of solfege, but this expands out from do up to la. I don't think this example, and it also has the T. So the full scale is here around a pentascale, a step below do to T, and the step above so to la. So a little bit of this one. And this is still in the bass clef, but I've shown you and you've seen that there are multiple voicings available. We won't record again. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, sol. La, sol, fa, mi, re, do, re. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa. to step away from this one for the moment. And so that gives you an introduction to some of the echo singing. Again, primarily so that students can make the connection between what the music sounds like, what it looks like on the staff, and then what we name it in solfege. When musicians have united into one entity, what it sounds like, what it looks like, and how we name it, then they really have musicianship skills that they can transfer into their sight singing and into dictation. Let me show you now a video of one of the more difficult exercises within this first volume of Listen-Sing, and it's what I call Sing Tonic. And the learning objectives are to hear a piece of music and then to sing the tonic pitch in a tonal context, and then to retain that tonic pitch even when you get some detractor pitches. Now, the one that I took a video of is a more advanced one. There are 12 sing tonic exercises that are from the major key, or that use a major key, major mode. And so 8 out of 12 is a more advanced one. And this is a video in which you will hear the full accompaniment and hear me singing it. And I can already preview it up here. I should have made a few mistakes. I was working kind of hard because this was a more difficult one. So here's the video. Detractor pitches. I have found that students get to prove to themselves and to me that, yes, I can retain tonic. And of course, while they're sight singing, while they're taking dictation, while they're performing, that ability to hold on to tonic is something that helps students in the process of doing all those musicianship skills. And so I actually created these exercises just about at the beginning of this calendar year, actually. I had a graduate student who had trouble holding on to tonic when sight singing. And I thought, oh, smart music can be a really good tool here, because our schedules didn't allow for the student to come spend 20, 30 minutes a day with me, where I would play musical examples and the student would then try to sing tonic, or play the detractor non-tonic pitches and the student continued to try to sing tonic. And I created these just for this student. And by the end of the semester, the students' aural skills and musicianship and ability to sight sing and ability to take dictation really improved in a way that cemented for me, wow, smart music really can be a very effective tutor for aural skills. Let's go back to smart music itself and show you some, okay. Another component for what is in Listen-Sing are some canons. And all of these are diatonic canons at this point, and there are 13 of them. I love to assign students to sing canons. First of all, it's somewhat like assisted sight singing, because while they are hearing the earlier voices that came in previously, they're getting a hint of what they're going to be singing. So I will play this for you. And of course, you're welcome to sing along. There is 4 measures of multi-measure rest, and you will see that on screen it will keep count not only which measure the music you are hearing, where it's at, but also which beat number in that measure. I love canons. I try to end most of my aural skills classes with canons because they're melodic and they're harmonic. So it's a very satisfying musical experience. Typically, if this was a three-voice canon, so I will just divide the total class into 3 groups. And by this point in the semester, they are asking, oh, can we end with singing a canon? Because then they walk out the door having forgotten that they might not have done very well earlier in the class with some dictation, but they can leave singing and feeling good about creating music, making music with their classmates. So I really enjoy performing them live, and then by putting them in with smart music, students can practice. It's, as I say, it is assisted sight singing because they get to hear it in advance before they actually sight sing it. Another component of Listen-Sing Volume 1 are pentascales. In my aural skills classes, one of the first exercises that they have, a performance exercise that they will do for me, is to sing pentascales on letter names, and they actually are also playing at the piano in octaves the same pentascales. So typically they have to do what we call sing and play exercises on Fridays, and my smart music assignments are due on Thursday. So the night before, they have to perform pentascales for me live. In smart music, they do the same assignment so that it reinforces what they're going to do the next day. There is an accompaniment to this, so we can't do the assessment part, otherwise the assessment will look very messy. But the other thing about this is that because of course, I'm teaching freshman level college aural skills, so I'm asking them to memorize. I've given them more than a week to work on this every day, and I ask them to memorize all the pentascales, and I work around the descending circle of fifths from C major over to D flat, and then at D flat they change into sharps and head back around the circle of fifths and end up back at C major. And that's one long assignment, and I get to hear that many, many times on a Friday morning. When they're done, what have they learned? They've learned the first 5 notes of every major scale, and they've also learned how to sing and how to spell all of their major triads. Okay, we don't do G flat major, but we can, if they know G major, they can get to G flat major pretty quickly. So I'm doing multiple things at the same time by asking them to learn to sing pentascales. The other thing is that when we go in written theory class to actually talk about how to construct major triads, they already know them all, and then they can tell me about major thirds and minor thirds without a lot of prompting. So I find that asking the students to memorize pentascales in multiple keys really prepares them for further, more advanced knowledge in music theory. So a little bit of what this one sounds like. Oh, and then at the end, in order to move from C to F to B flat to E flat and so forth, at the very end of one key, we take the third of that key and turn it into the leading tone to the next key, so they have a nice transition. What this leads to about 6 or 7 weeks later is that instead of just singing a triad, we will turn the beginning triad into a dominant seventh and then resolve it. So C becomes C7, leads to F. F becomes F7, leads to B flat, and so forth around. So everything is very cumulative, spiral learning, scaffolding, it all connects. Here's an example of what this sounds like. And this I do have them sing on letter names, because singing solfege would just... C, F, G, F, B, D, major, I'll stop right there. We won't go all the way around. You'll notice that I give them the labels, because if they don't already know letter names, then this gives them an opportunity to reinforce the names of the lines and spaces in a scalar order. And the bass clef voices would learn bass clef. It would also be possible to ask treble clef voices to read the one in bass clef. So there's lots of opportunities here to make that connection between what it sounds like, what it looks like on the staff, and how we label those notes on the staff. Let's see. And then, and of course, if we were just do this in solfege, it would be redundant because it would be the same solfege if you use movable do. If you use fixed do, of course, then the solfege would change. And also, in order to create one label for a quarter note or one label per note head, I use the sound of a little bit of air at the end of flat names and then sh at the end of sharp names. So that's, if you thought you heard me say something funny, F, G, A, beef, C, beef, A, G. Yes, and so if this were F, G, H, B, C, students laugh at it, and at first they're a little puzzled by it, but after a while they get on board, and we start talking about, well, did you sing C or C? And it's just a nice, very convenient way to have one syllable name on one note head. Okay, so these are some of the also music literacy, and then working to combine sound with notation with the label system. Another thing is that the metronome is, you can turn it off or turn it back on. I find that something like this, I would generally assign it without the metronome, and that's just fine. If there's lots of notes that they're singing, then I expect them to keep that internal pulse and then to keep up with the accompaniment. There are some exercises where I absolutely recommend leaving on the metronome, like the sing tonic exercise, where there's so much where they're listening and then have to come in exactly in time. So it's that back and forth that I find that the metronome is really quite important. And of course, most of these exercises have accompaniment. So if you turn off the accompaniment, then it's a little bit empty. Okay, the next type of exercise that you will find in the listen sing method includes basslines. There are a number of basslines. These are all basslines by Johann Sebastian Bach. Some of them are basslines that come directly from some of his choral motets, and then also some just other basslines that I have found that I like. There are 12 major diatonic. These don't have any chromatic notes in them. And they're major key, and there are another 12 that are minor diatonic, and in this case they would have the leading tone sometimes. They might quote the melodic minor scale that does that turnaround, so la ti do ti le so. And then there are a set of 12 that actually modulate. So let's look at one of the minor ones, and I'll just so there's a choice here, and let's open that one. And yes, it's treble voice. Opening it. But you'll notice that, yes, I chose treble voice, but they're still having to read in the bass clef. So this is building that bass clef reading skill for treble clef voices. Now, all of these bass lines have an accompaniment. And so if you prefer for students to perform without the accompaniment, then you would turn it off. So we'll listen to it both ways. Notice that it just starts right on beat 1. And in this case, you will want to access the tonicization pattern, or students can simply play it once to get a sense of the tonality, and they would hear the accompaniment perhaps while they practice sight singing it. Now, sometimes the accompaniment which is from the real music. It's really from BWV 495, and it might include the bass line. So before you assign it, if you want the music to include the bass line, you would then assign it without the accompaniment. So let's take a listen. Okay, so you heard that the accompaniment in this case provides the bass line because it was an exact quote from BWV 495. So if you wanted to assign more like an assisted sight reading, assign it with the accompaniment. If you didn't want it to be an assisted and truly a real sight singing, independent, no accompaniment, then you would turn off the accompaniment. Another thing to notice is that if the students had sung all the minor pentascales, I'm going to go back one tab, and under pentascales, there's major key and it's C over to D flat. There's major key that starts C sharp and goes back around to C. And then there's minor pentascales where it's just the 5-note scale around the minor. And everything's adjusted. The accompaniment will feature minor chords and all the proper letter names for all the pitches. And so if I had asked the students to sing through minor pentascales and then assigned them this bass line a couple of weeks later, I might put in the instructions, locate the D minor pentascale within this bass line, so that I reference materials that I've asked them to sing that are musical structures, and then apply that knowledge to a sight singing context. So here's the do, re, mi, fa, so, do. I personally use minor do, but if you were to use minor la, you could easily do that because the sight singing does not have solfege attached to it. So that's some of the bass lines. And of course, if your students are going to be getting into part writing or having to create bass lines or analyze music with the bass lines, then sight singing them and having that in their toolkit or having that in their repertoire is a great advantage. Now, pretty tough, perhaps some of the hardest of the aural skills exercises within this first volume of Listen Dash Sing are what's called in-back singing. I'll demonstrate it, and I will hit play. I won't assess it at the same time. Okay, you heard what I did. In one measure, Smart Music provides the pitch that I'm going to sing in the next measure while it plays another pitch that I'm going to sing in the next measure. And so this is that ability to sing one pitch and actively listen and retain, hold in my short-term memory, a different pitch that I'm about to sing while I'm still singing what Smart Music played previously. And this skill in back singing, I've been told that some people can do 5, 6 back. I'm working up to that, but I'm still at about 2 and 3 myself. This was a skill that was just introduced to me a couple of years ago at a conference called Pedagogy into Practice, and or was it Practice into Pedagogy? It was a wonderful conference about teaching music theory, teaching aural skills, and Timothy Chenette from Utah talked about in-back singing. And I'd only ever heard of it once before, but he talked about using this with his aural skills classes. I thought, I need to try this, because that ability to sing one pitch and yet audiate, hold in your short-term memory an entirely different pitch. We use that in sight singing. We use that in taking dictation. And so I wanted my students to have that skill. Now, initially, I started with some zero back. So if you're going to try to assign these to students, I recommend starting with the zero back. And you'll notice that there are rests every other measure. It's still hidden pitches, because if the pitches were visible, then it would be sight singing. And that's not what this is about. This is really about the very abstract skill of manifesting pitch when it's not already on the page and it's entirely an abstract aural skill. I say abstract because we can't touch sound. We can't manipulate sound. It's so abstract. And so I start with zero back, and then we move into one back exercises. And then there's also another whole set. Let's see if I can find them. Oh, 1.5 back. And they will hear two pitches, and then while they are singing two pitches, they will sing one pitch. Yes, they hear two pitches, and then while they're singing two pitches, they hear one. The next measure, they sing one, hear two, and it keeps going back and forth like that.
That's pretty incredible. You know, when you sang the first exercise, I was trying to quietly follow along on my side, and I was good with the first staff, but when we got to the second staff, I was like, I can't follow along anymore.
I do have some data. Oh, sorry. I do have some data. I collected the scores over a semester and how much time it took for students at the beginning of the semester until the end of the semester. And the last one was the same exercise as the first one. And what happened at the beginning of the semester, it took lots of repetitions. And it took them a lot of time before they would submit the assignment. And as we got to the end of the semester, it only took about 1 or 2 tries in order to submit. So you acquire the skill.
Yeah, I was gonna comment that it totally sounds like a precursor to harmonic dictation, because when you're taking harmonic dictation, you need to hold 2, 3, 4 pitches in your head at the same time to be able to write them down. And then it also reminded me of an experience that I had with a former classmate of mine, and back in high school. Somebody, not him, but anyone could just sit at the piano and play a cluster of keys all at once, and then he would not be watching, and then he could tell you each and every one of those notes, and it was just mind-blowing.
Yeah, exactly. So what I have found over time using smart music, and I started to use smart music about 10 years ago. My first smart music presentation was in 2010 at a conference, and is that my students' musicianship skills improve. Because first of all, those of us who remember our aural skills classes, and sight singing was done in front of your classmates for a grade, and it was the fear factor in aural skills, because if you weren't already a good sight singer, having to sight sing in front of your peers could be very frightening and probably didn't make you any better at sight singing. Whereas my students can practice their aural skills and their sight singing in private. They get feedback from smart music, visual feedback with the red note, yellow note, green notes, hopefully mainly green notes. But the yellow notes and red notes are very instructive to them. They can practice in the privacy of their own home, their own room, depending on if they're in a dorm or at home. And they have told me they really appreciate this. And what I have seen and experienced is that even the good musicians even the good sight singers find that they increase their skills just that much more. Now I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint here. I think we've looked at all these Basslines, in-back singing. So again, practice proficiency, not perfection. When I assign students smart music, I ask them to repeat an assignment until they earn a score of at least 80. Because I don't want them to spend hours and hours on end working towards that 100. You probably have a few students like this who are very perfectionistic, and I don't want to reinforce that in them. Once you earn an 80 from me, that is proficiency. If you make a 55, well, try it again. You have as much time to achieve proficiency. And this is where differentiated learning, a student who needs more repetition can use the repetition, can take advantage of just doing another take. And then they submit when they get 80. So I really want to reinforce this. Practice proficiency, not perfectionism. And the list of music literacy skills, musicianship and aural skills, matching pitch, singing voice, audiate, that inner hearing, echo singing, short-term memory, sing musical structures and patterns, working memory. Once those musical structures and patterns are memorized, they go into your working memory. And then sight reading and sight singing, error detection, that's the real culminating one that we all use every day. And then active listening in rehearsal and performance. That's the real goal here. What they can take into the rehearsal room and into the performance stage in order to be more engaged in their performance when they're using active musicianship skills. Okay, have I talked too much, or is there any time for questions?
No, I think this has been great. I personally have learned so much from listening you speak and from exploring some of the exercises in the method book. I think I'm going to incorporate that to my daily routine just to make sure I keep up my aural skills. So we do have some questions, but we still have time to listen for and read any others. So I'm just going to ask a few that came in while you were talking. So somebody asked, do you use these exercises in class, or is it mostly for assignments so that the students can practice on their own?
I absolutely use them in both contexts, because especially, for example, in the Pentascales exercises, that they're going to have to come in and perform them at the piano, playing in octaves, left and right hand, and then sing them while they're playing at the piano. So I will use the pentascale exercise multiple classes before it's actually an assignment in Smart Music, and then before they have to perform it for a grade. And if I just hit the play button in Smart Music, then I can move around the room and hear individuals singing while also trying to be attentive to what the whole group is singing. So absolutely.
That's great. That's great. Somebody else asked, how do you assign these?
Let me bounce back to this. Let me see. Okay, so if I go find listen-sing, I spelled that right. Okay, and I click on it, and you see the lovely graphic that they created, that Smart Music designers created. I really like that. Assign. And it doesn't ask me which voice type. That's going to end up in the assignment. It asks me which exercise. And so I will say, luck, and then assign, and then it's the usual assignment bit. One of the things that I always put, let me see if it's just wrong, is after, let's see if I can spell, after the mic check, put on earbuds or headphones.
That's a great reminder. That's a great reminder, because Smart Music is designed to work with the external microphone of your device. But since most devices have their external microphones so close to their speakers, if the students don't wear headphones or earbuds, that accompaniment is going to be recorded by the mic, and you will hear that in the assessment, and it will interfere with the feedback that the students will receive. So that's a best practice, is to use headphones or earbuds when making recording takes. So thank you for bringing that up.
Exactly. Since this is a canon, I would not do the metronome, because they're going to be hearing, you have to have the accompaniment. And then with this, allow my part. For example, let me go into Pentascales. It's off, but even if it were to be turned on, the way these files were created, this won't make any sound. I'll play it. They have to create it themselves. Minor chord. On these exercises, the way that these files were input into Smart Music, the part that the student is to perform, they can't just hit my part and hear it. So if it's a real sight singing exercise, they can't just hit play and hear it. They will really have to sight sing it.
Oh, that's great. That is really great, because in most of the other sight singing books and exercises that are available in Smart Music, I believe that if you do click my part, the student will be able to hear that part as played by a Smart Music sound. So this is
sure.
This
and
is
there's
really
value. Oh, sorry. There is value in that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if they're looking at the notation and they're hearing what that notation sounds like, that's a different exercise. That's not real sight singing.
Yeah.
Yeah, assisted sight singing.
Here's another question that came in. Can the listen sing method be coordinated with current aural skills textbooks?
Listen Sing was just released at the beginning of October. So that was last week,
Yeah.
week before last. And so that has not yet happened. And there are intentions for a couple more volumes. For example, you can imagine that before we get to harmonic dictation, we sing a lot of chord arpeggios. That, again, I never ask my students to sight sing or to take dictation of any musical structure that I haven't already asked them to sing and internalize. So there's much more of listen sing yet to be published, and I think at that point I would work toward I think we could be 3 to 4 volumes, we'll see. Then we'll work toward coordinating it with a 4-semester curriculum. Certainly if you teach music theory AP, there's a lot in here for music theory AP teachers as well.
Great. Here's another question that came in earlier. I know that these materials were created to be used in the college level aural skill classes, but would you recommend using them in the elementary, middle school, and or high school classrooms?
Absolutely. And now my students, first semester college freshmen this fall, on average, I'm assigning them 10, 11, 12 Smart Music assignments a week. But this is college level, and I ask them to purchase a Smart Music subscription as if it were the textbook, because I don't ask them to buy anything else. They do their sight singing through this, and so they don't have to buy a sight singing collection. Now, if I were still teaching junior high choir, you bet you, or any elementary can certainly do the echo singing, or the echo singing, in order to reinforce, again, the notation, the sound, the labels. The in-back singing, that's a bit tricky. I recognize that. But some of those entry-level sing tonics, that could, maybe not the one that didn't show up right away. Maybe not the number 8, but number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would absolutely use this with every level musician, because truly this is musicianship for all. And it doesn't matter if they're college level or where on the spectrum. Community members in the community choir, in the community band, all of these can help to improve musicianship and aural skills.
That's great. All right, well, let me see if we have any additional questions. It seems like we have answered all of the questions that have come in. So thank you, Cynthia, so much for doing this webinar. I think it's been absolutely wonderful. And before we close for the day today, I'm just going to share a few remaining slides. So if you're interested in purchasing smart music, because you don't already have it, on our website, under pricing right there, our website is smartmusic.com. You can buy a teacher subscription directly on the website for $80 per teacher per year. And students can also buy what we call the performer subscription directly on the website for $40 for performer per year. Now, we also offer academic pricing so that if you have a large number of teachers and or students together, you can take advantage of reduced pricing, and that's also available on our website. For eligible purchases with multiple teachers or classes, then the teacher subscription comes down to $40 per student per year. And then there's 3 different levels of student subscriptions. So check it out on our website. We also have several teachers, and Cynthia is one of them, who have provided testimonials with, there's many different ways to use Smart Music, not a single one. And so you can also go to our website to check those out. We have answered all of your questions, so thank you again so much for your time, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much, Cynthia.
Thank you, Giovanna.
All right, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.